I don't really care.
Are you guys good with that?
Yeah.
He didn't speak for us, so. Would you like that? The ginger thing?
Spicy.
It is spicy.
I was like, what?
It's spicy.
Why I can't hear my mouth like this?
It's spicy. Do you want a
All I'm
ginger
saying
too?
is that, you know, we could
Okay.
have pretty good today.
What are they? Spicy gum.
Gin
No.
gins, baby.
Ginger.
What are
Gin
those?
gins,
It's just like
baby.
a chewy ginger candy.
Oh, those are good.
Yeah, these are good, right? So I would offer you one, but I probably would affect your speaking. So
Yeah, no, I don't want one.
maybe it's better. But yeah, it's graphic.
the ginger. Ah yes, myself the ginger.
It's me.
It me.
It's me. It me.
So are we?
Don't know if there's any bathroom or not bathrooms, water fountains around here. I'm
I
like,
think they're all outside because this was built in like World War I. So
Okay.
yeah, pretty sure.
Yeah. Maybe I should tax widely. Do like I let you go to the bathroom. I get some of your water.
I would say.
Are we-
Yeah, I want to start nothing. That's what I do. So like I teach 8th grade parley, you know?
You teach 8th grade parley.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so funny. I mean, they're all terrorists, but like it's hilarious.
Middle
They
schoolers
are.
terrorists.
Wolfgang Puck's kid is in my class.
What?
What?
Just Harvard Westlake vibes.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, why do racial minorities perform worse on the SAT or ACT?
There's a couple reasons. First is just like a structural argument that Hernandez makes about how minorities just like tend to do worse statistically, or that's like the first piece of evidence actually. The Hernandez evidence talks about how there are like structural barriers to access to the SAT that are disproportionately leveled against like, or I guess
Like
just
what?
like exist. What?
What are those structural barriers?
So things like cost, like the SAT costs money, and some people just like don't have enough to pay for it. Some people just like, or there's a lot of people who just like aren't aware of it until it's too late, which can skew their like admissions process since a lot of schools require the SAT. There's a cultural bias argument that tests are written by white people and geared towards white vocabulary and white lived experiences, which excludes black lived experiences. There's some more arguments in the Colbert evidence that talk about how these types of things are actually so reflective of socioeconomic status that you could like literally just like hand someone a piece of paper that's like, here's your score without even like measuring like what their GPA is and other things because it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. Why are university admissions important?
So that's our impact evidence. It talks about how university admissions is something that remedies the structural exclusion of minorities from the university. And
Okay,
what?
so besides university admissions, if university admissions get better, that changes the access to the university. Why is that important? You just said university admissions is
So
important.
I was getting to that.
Admit
So
people to the
once universities just like remedy the structural barrier to inclusion, those same people who go there can do things like go out and are statistically more likely to have, or people who have a bachelor's degree are statistically more likely to have higher jobs, and our evidence says that for black people, the median earnings for a prime age working adult were 67% higher for those with a bachelor's degree than those who only had a high school diploma.
Sure. How much of a change in admissions, can you like give me a statistic on how much it results in? I know you gave like an example of Hampshire College. Can you like tell me how much?
The Hampshire College, when Hampshire just got rid of their tests, they had a 10% increase in diversity, and like obviously this isn't like 100% general.
Over how much time?
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. But I guess like it's not completely generalizable to like other universities, but it does have some predictive power for what.
Okay, it says, do you have any other examples of solvency besides Hampshire College of complete abolition?
Hampshire College is the only college in the United States that is completely abolished.
Okay, so it's the only example for absolvency. Okay.
Yeah.
Sending the docket 3 off case.
Oh.
We're going to GSU? We're going to ASU? Oh yeah. Who else is going there?
29 you sent it.
Doesn't matter. If you're on receiving end, my registrations, if I'm on the GSU. told me that, I had to leave the room.
Did you say it?
I was so.
Yeah.
I was like, so Gene's here? Or like, we're not going to.
Alright, I have a son. I just got it.
This is just so, like.
Oh, your name is not Eugene DebateDrills. That's so cool.
It's the special debate email.
Yeah.
Because
Could mean
otherwise the docs get like all messed up with my regular email and it's hard to find.
Yeah, no, I did that too.
We.
That's like why I have WLH just in
We
case.
do?
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, you have like a lot of clout because your name is like.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
No, we're going to the
Fair.
room yet, invited to the room room.
Oh, yeah.
You said three in that case?
Yeah.
I remember that. Remember that
I
tournament.
wish. Okay.
Oh, well, they sent me like an email
Your
like
phone?
a couple
Yeah.
in August.
Probably good idea.
In August, and I was like, it's August. I have
Um,
been doing work for another school.
okay.
I literally cannot. I could not explain to you how difficult my life is.
There, 3 off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
Yes.
First is the disad. The court will rule on LGBTQ protections whether the court will agree default to statutory interpretations or political ideology as the court determined in Quinlan 817. Supreme Court will hear arguments on anti-LGBTQ employment discrimination. This is momentous. The case will affect the ability of the LGBTQ people to be full members of society and contribute to society or entering the workplace and be free of discrimination offenses of LGBTQ equality or Chinese mental protections not about whether the arguments are decided whether the court will hear to purposes, recession, or interpretation of political ideology. And Roberts is ideologically committed to the right, but his top priority is maintaining the perception that the court is not partisan. So left now Quinn 3A. Roberts is letting the world he's not one of them. You've got the court but he has not moved to the left and said the chief justice working to shield the accusations. Justices are politely moved in Robert, of course, representing studying the chief justice careful and doesn't want them to be seen as politicians. Roberts particularly sensitive to this concern at the moment. Robert himself is only notion that justice are right part of politics, and the plan will obturate the court. The after will be challenged. Holders 14 requirements election systems in the city of Paris reject impossible instead of relying on precise and instead of not getting shown there's a reason to believe that somebody's case has been more likely to favor a representative minority than the SCP. The only way to stop children privilege from party polling still further ahead under such a system where you're going to favor minorities, but students who lost that decision result of suffering would be unlikely to take part in more. So this election system are rapidly generating a new game of power politics in which local persons are such for the definition of meritorious in which is recourse to the course becomes routine. The nation capital is part of our culture where they would make today's rural permissions look benign. And that gives Roberts the discretion to send right on LGBTQ protections to US-712. After Kavanaugh spent a little more team in Germany, a little more while avoiding the received his partisan body, I talked about it on conservative liberal times lines only 7 times Roberts example of returning conservative maturity in person when the other version of the tribes ever given out citizenship to the question of the citizenship Supreme Court of one discrimination against gay and transgender issues and the impact outweighs LGBTQ communities are subject to a connotation of discriminatory violence even as 15. All people have equal right to live free of violence, discrimination, and stigma over everything of LGBTI individuals. Human rights violations is called for unfair and uphold human rights of LGBTI people. Protecting from discriminatory practices causes serious violation of human rights and high poverty and violence is a country increase vulnerability, and social and economic including pretty sure families and community impacting negatively on economic growth. Next off is the counterplan. The United States federal government should, 1, significantly increase funding for needs-based student financial aid grants and loans to provide a path through debt forgiveness for working college graduates earning less than the median national income. 2, initiate fully funded, transparently policy results of scrupulous research programs into college admissions, graduation, post-graduation salary, and cost of education statistics. 3, rigorously enforce accountability standards for universities. 4, fully fund and implement minority teacher recruitment programs. 5, for create national and progressive children saving accounts and fund them proportional to family income level. 6, permanent students can consolidate federal education funding. 7, mandate all 50 states and territories. 8, permanent students in local performing public schools to transfer to high-performing public schools and parent choice. B, grant corporations offer dollar tax credits for contribution to organizations that fund private public schools shall respect for low-income students. C, significantly invest in expanding charter schools and online learning. D, institute teacher performance pay. E, recognize honor non-traditional routes to teacher certification. F, curtail the social promotion of students. Minority teacher recruitment program. So still about strong and Lucas Hall. Attention to minority teacher recruitment program. Giving my attention to user code to help reduce racial and federal organization. Diversify the team for monitoring not to include delegating representing user code relative to students who are also not allowed policy making to adjust policies and the diversity of experiences with the teaching persons and potential educational opportunities and children saving accounts of financial aid told Dottie 17. Creation of programs and children saving accounts of and scale amounts of ban companies putting on the show more for putting with your car and coming sure with long-term locally such account will reduce welfare for you like my help so one generation by 23% and make higher education affordable being made financial aid grants or working student and overtime or work for working countries earning less than that international income to increase access to higher education for students from lower income families and these states plain so the law number 10 Florida education reforms to advance racial achievement gap Florida is expanding black students after reading average for all students 7 for performing public schools charging public public school be charging public school be high performing public school parent choice private schools corporations, government country, contribution, or the mathematical cars, including chargeable, opportunity, the social organization, or teacher, alternative teacher education, attribution, RSC, assuredly, play important role, bringing qualification, and classroom, plus accountability, students in school, how to account for academic outcomes, social promotion, allowing seats flexibility, will ensure schools are held accountable, and the first three things ensure socioeconomic fairness and consumer protection, but also federal government has a role to play in promoting educational opportunity, subsidizing higher education, students, financial limited opportunity, access, students with limited research, marker government, collective students even information available, option, exchange, information on prices, government, develop, insurance, and government, but eligibility, and grow students, institution, transfer, entire protection, capital, crisis, meet up, or performing institutions, or equity, more and better information necessary for providing educational opportunities. Third off is the K, the app shift to holistic, personalized academic evaluation in favor of standardized testing is complicit in the violence of neoliberal atomistic individualization, their pragmatic justification merely serve to shroud the malevolence of their ideological commitment to the technocratic managerialism and Cartesian politics will control. A key component of personalized education, for example, education needs to enable children to work personalized learning and promote automated administration tooling and more customized education, difference becomes slightly as a result of planning citizens and consumer values, which can be served with rational judgment, commercial learning, champion, rational center, learning, commodity, order, control, rational utility, maximizing research, sophistication, rational knowledge, essential learning, so we're reinforcing the liberal driver, now atomistic individualization, diversity in education, extending scope of micro-based mechanism as well and usually as sex for you, we'll go with some person that's autonomous being to the measure of people, organization, advocates, bring on learning, by that accusation majority of the ideological bound of their arguments random intended pragmatic charge equality regulation, further the authority of external factors, operative rationalism and efficiency, everything contributes to the team in which you are contrary to as it appears to be relevant. We are witnessing on semester one that is taking certainty and responsibility of individuals, and this is an ontologically violent worldview that enrolls all entities in an eternal nihilism of profit maximization, devalues human existence, Jordan 13. Nihilism is no more than uniform to take government, deep within the activity, conjugating against any preservancy, usable government, and transformation for neoliberalism is characterizing ontological driving reveal things in the original for calculabilities, unmarked rationality, liberal governmentality, and inclusion for purposes of activity, something economic accountability, benefit maximizing productive economics, things that reveal is useful, colonialism, globalization, science, understanding part of benefits, that any existence is solely certain analysis, utility, practice, often and trading, that's represent timeless, time, showing homelessness, calculative, aimlessness, cut the card of calculative aimlessness, and the alternative is to think ontologically, vote negative, to interrupt preconceived hegemonic understanding of being in favor of that which exceeds technological mastery and the reductionist nihilism of modernity. Thompson 16. Academic disciplines understanding is nothing beyond the maximum for education versus LBC, this biology, understanding less nihilistic on the biology. Academic doing free understanding and technology, usually on standard revision on the will become THs, less than technology, all covered on analysis, way to understanding, no longer directly it as an order of logic and natural control, as an extreme meaning, use the resource for non-linear dynamic source of intelligibility, both of them can exceed or attempt to capitalize the extent that they should situate focus on the gap, situation counter or provider or showing exceeds or mastery and frustrates our plans, cut the card, plans in case alternatives to standardized testing are less reliable and reduce minority enrollment, Woolridge 14. Critics of the NDP reinforcers and murmuring research such as crashing the GPA when you see the look at the implication of the founding and member of will demand 80% for 80% more rights to help paper reading that he found SET are better for and high school GPAs and predicting freshman grades in nearly all school subjects. Cut the card at subjects.
Cool. You said, where's subject?
Subjects.
Oh, in nearly all subjects? Is that
In nearly all subjects.
And then where'd you mark that last
More
one?
judges.
Where did I mark Thompson?
Yeah.
It says frustrates are and then pre-existing isn't highlighted and then plans.
Yeah.
I see it.
Because continental.
That's 7.
Okay.
So which
Sorry,
one?
1 sec.
Yeah, just give me a second.
There were 7 in there, yeah.
Oh, B
You want to
would
just send
be
me
technically on there.
Yeah, yeah.
I can just tell you right now, it's all the ones
Okay.
that aren't me, Scott, or B.
Okay, everyone that's not used now.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Let me know, Ryan.
Chat.
Probably. Scott! Oh.
Just walk outside and ask.
Do you want me to get in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
John! John!
I don't know. We need you.
Dude, you need to.
If we have somebody in the corners that we got to do for.
Yeah, that's right.
Sweet.
Oh, that's good. That's good news for me. That's really good news.
Is it?
$100 for like one bag.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay. We are ready to be
Okay.
Okay. What is core capital?
What is court capital?
Yeah.
Sure, court capital is its ability to maintain ideological commitment to certain ideals.
But who has the, who knows what core capital is, and who has the quantification and expertise to determine what core capital is?
what do you mean? Like, who is able to define it? Who is able to
No,
define
who's
it?
able to measure like how much core capital someone has right now?
Like, that is not, I mean, that is not, like, the overall court. We're saying there's not a specific person. Like, I don't understand what the question is.
Okay, no, I'm just wondering like who's qualified to make decisions about how much core capital someone has.
Who is qualified to make decisions? Somebody who has, like, examined the past decisions of justices?
Okay, so like I hypothetically could like look into like how justices have like ruled in the past in 2019 and then make, or like just look at judges' historical records and then make claims based on that.
I mean, if you are able to, like, do it in a way that makes sense, yes.
Okay.
Like, if you're qualified enough to do it, there's not like a bright line for
Your ev
knowing
says-
a certain amount of stuff about a subject.
Okay, so your ev says that the ruling will take place on October 8th for LGBT rights. How does the plan manage to get that to SCOTUS by going through things like lower courts, getting the Supreme Court to grant cert, etc.?
Yeah, sure. So, obviously, like, the plan, or sorry, that was, obviously, the courts don't, like, they're not just, like, they don't just, like, see a decision and then, like, immediately, they only don't have, they're, like, thinking more long term.
No, I guess your evidence says that this LGBT ruling is happening on October 8th, but we've seen in past cases related to this, like the Asian Americans and Harvard discrimination lawsuit, that it's taken like a couple years to get through the ranks of the courts and then finally make it to the Supreme Court, in which they're going to decide probably this year. But how does the app get to make it to the court in just a month?
That is not the argument we're making. The argument we're making is that justices will see things like the app coming, and especially things that are like, we make the claim that this will be like a major issue, and plan for that in advance.
Okay, wait. No, they'll plan for it in advance? How does that make any sense?
What do you mean? They'll plan for it in advance and thus change rulings in advance of that because they are planning so that they will have capital to vote on other things.
Do you see that it gives Roberts the discretion to swing right on LGBT protections?
Yeah.
Why does it make sense for Roberts to like preemptively swing left if he knows that something is coming that might swing right?
Wait, what?
So
Preemptively swing right on LGBTQ protections so as to avoid
yeah.
Yeah, well, because obviously he has to do that because you have durable fiat and otherwise the app gets struck down.
Okay. Status of the counterclaims?
So all condo.
Are the claims conditional?
No.
Great.
What do you want to be our director?
Doesn't it require a master's?
I'm asking you, as someone who will have an intricate, role in choosing the next director. I'm subtly hinting to you. If not, how much do we have to pay you?
I didn't.
Next year?
I also had to wait for this. I also had to wait for this.
But, okay, what about assistant coach?
No, I mean, we offered that.
If we give you didn't, do we not
We
give
didn't.
you? What?
Yeah.
Yo, guys, he's slack. Literally.
Well, don't you don't have a Jasmine pick from that country?
Yeah, we barely got her. Just moving as a truck on the street.
Yeah.
So,
Remember, because I roomed with her at camp in June, and she was like talking about it. I'll be over there. I'll be over there.
So I was like, I literally was like,
Yeah, no,
I
that's.
was like, my top two choices. So please
Team
just
trip.
do whatever you can do. We got one. Now we got two.
No, she'll be over there. Get her like this.
125 bucks, almost kind of.
Hell yeah.
Strong man, Kevin.
Hell yeah.
Strong son.
Isn't Vanessa in there too? Love that. Former Labby.
One of my close friends from
Just Kansas things. There's so much Kansas.
There's a lot of
There's
Kansas.
so much.
A lot of Kansas that you're gonna see.
Okay.
A lot of need.
What's the order?
It's the case, the disad, the counterplan, and then the K.
Counterplan and the K?
Yeah.
I just use a policy. These
Let me
are
write
all
down
the
that.
2AC
1
columns.
minute.
What?
Let me write down that I have 125 prep left. Oh my god. Alright, we good?
Yep.
What?
Oh wait, I need to start timer. Yeah.
Cool. Standardized tests are biased and prevent minorities from accessing higher education. The impact of cycles of inequality and earning disparities, which affects black and brown bodies' quality of life. Cultural bias. Standardized testing is extremely culturally biased. It relies on what experiences, and vocabulary, which doesn't reflect other cultures, and is inaccessible, which is a solvency deficit to the counterplan. The disad. One point is that the ruling will take place on October 8th. There's no evidence that the case will just get to that the case will get to SCOTUS in just a month. For a ruling, the court has to grant cert, which requires a lower court split, which is also unlikely. There's zero risk of the disad. Second is that the courts don't know that durable fiat exists. They don't know that durable fiat exists. The courts will see that something is coming through the courts, but then they'll just see it and dismiss it because there are tons of other things that might make it to the Supreme Court too. And this thing isn't uniquely key, which means that there's no preemption. Third is that there's no vote switching. Capital is bulletproof. Gibson, it's all empirical evidence contradicts this assumption, which people awarded the President Bush. No research indicated legitimacy was based on the Senate authority into an area of the law which the court had generally deferred. Well-established findings have been emerged. Studies have shown the court is bulletproof and able to get away with any ruling, and any risk of the disad is bad. That encourages the model debate where contrived arguments reign over quality topic literature. Any risk encourages the negative to flee to the margins, where to avoid caution creates disparate research burdens by artificially inflating the risk of bad disads. Oh wait, there's a case term. They say alternative is worse, but one point is that the SAT is uniquely bad because of cultural bias. Second, that was above. Second is that the alternatives might exist, but though the SAT is one bad thing, which means that the app is a step in the right direction. Third is that this is about the old SAT because it's from 2014. It's from 2014, which means that it doesn't really apply. Now the counterplan first is that the counterplan links to the critique because it increases charter schools, which are fundamentally a neoliberal project of cost-benefit analysis, which encourages students to try to compete with each other, or schools to try to compete with each other, and then give market waivers to the best, give fee waivers to the best schools, which are basically run like private companies. Second, alternative agent counterplans are a voting issue. They let the neg fiat revolutionary reforms distills the absent mood 6 minutes of AC offense and shifts the debates and margins of the literature, which enables debaters to read bad politics disads rather than engage in well-researched objections to the affirmative. Conditionality is bad. It splits upon air and forced media hegemons. Multiple tuner collapses on the least covered position. Uniquely bad in LD since there's no intuitive foods develop credit offense, which kills fairness. Counterinterpret. You can kick the counterplan unless we straight turner, which solves most of your offense. The fourth, permutation to both. Fifth, permutation to the counterplan. And also it links to the net benefit because all these things reduce quantification. All these things reduce quantification. For example, they say that they for example, they talk about accessible standards, but this would probably reduce quantification because it makes it more lenient. Now the critique. First, they didn't reframe it. Capitalism is non-unique. Trump is in office right now, and he's saying that big business is better than ever. They do not get new to our framework since the one-year strategic choice was premised on the fact that the 1NC was underdeveloped framework. Way the case, anything else moves the opposite arbitrary and destroys topic education. The learning ontologically, all A point is there's a double bind. Either A point is that it includes it doesn't get rid of testing, in which case they still include the meritocracy. It means that they cannot solve the affirmative or any of neoliberalism in the status quo. B point is that they eliminate testing, in which case the permutation solves because it includes the affirmative.
case that way is they barely have residual links in the plan is something that is good. Think of it like a paper. A teacher wouldn't fail you if you misused something or if you misimplicated something. The affirmative is also inseparable from the plan. Using our rhetoric is necessary to make it across donors, regents, and administrators who only care about economics. Floating pics are bad because they steal the entire YC's new topic education and kill 6 minutes of YC off its value to life. Yes, value to life. People always find it contingently in things like family or family, friends, etc. And in spaces outside of it, which proves that it's not unique. The private actor fiat is a voting issue because it allows them to fiat through it allows them to fiat the affirmative. It means that we can't win. And GPA is always something that is better because it is not something that is holistic. It's something that is holistic compared to the standardization of tests. Do I have comments?
No, you're good.
In this particular moment.
Wow. That's like, I feel like I want to put that on my Instagram story. Hey.
I'm Jasmine.
Hey, Instagram. Just me, Jasmine. Should set up for BTL.
It's fine.
No biggie.
It's fine. So cute.
Yeah.
Like, was it? I was. I know a lot of people told me, I think. I'm not sure if she necessarily is.
No, she's still fine. She's still just really school. No, I think she wants to get her job back so that she can come back. And then it doesn't matter where she goes back. Because right now she's fired. So she wants to get her job. She wants to get unfired and never signed. So it doesn't matter where she gets fired. I think.
Makes sense. So everything I have, because I was like, I'm doing what to do now. That's like something to do. It's all I do. Like, just like, I'm so bored.
Is the theory on the counter plan dropped to do?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna be a bad. I'm bad.
That's your two.
I'm gonna see her and I'll be cooking.
That was drama.
And then,
That's the only time the whole year they didn't work with us.
yeah.
I was so sad. I was already stand up pretty much.
You're debating Zane.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess I wasn't that even if I was.
Shout out to Zane. Where are you?
Shout out Zane.
Where's my man?
Shout out my man Zane. Shout out my white man Zane. Shout out my freshman
Where's
year
our
ending
woke-
till you created your white man.
Where's our woke accomplice Zane?
Where's our white supremacy demon? Where's our socioeconomic inequality perpetuator?
Are you working for anything for this one?
Yeah, I work this day.
What is he doing?
Directing amendment.
Oh,
So,
I thought he was
so,
doing
yeah, that's why I sent you the thing that was like, we're pushing this.
I can maybe like, I didn't that he was like taking it for all that. Interesting. So he's doing the NX thing. Yeah, that makes sense given that NX offers like way more women. Make the military
We need more of those women,
way more like
black people,
to make the military better.
so we can shoot our guns bigger. We're just gonna say that. We're not even gonna read a K versus an F. We're just gonna be like, look, dear old dog, like, this shit racist.
It's also vulnerable to like any of the news counterplan. That's just like just bombing the crap out of the military. Get a blank check. Like what are they gonna do? We're gonna take a budget, make a cut on budget deal.
Or even funds down.
Just funds them. Like the CT.
Kevin Hart was shaking in his boots.
Okay.
What's the order?
The order is going to be the dissent, counterclaim, K, case.
I did you know some people call me very like.
Don't, please. Is there an interview, please?
Judge.
Judge.
Debate. Judge.
Judge, please. My
Judge.
CP. Judge. Okay, so our CP
My
judge.
P-Tix. I love it. I love it.
Judge, but my process got it.
But legit,
I feel like my process counterclaim is fine, but my CP, you know?
my 8th graders are doing that. It's wholesome AF.
Oh, baby.
Okay, so basically, just the best is okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay,
Time
so
starts now.
basically, yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay,
basically
so
what we're
the
saying
time
is that. Basically, what we're saying is that you.
So basically, what we have given you, we have given you,
Okay, sorry, we are.
we have
so
given you
obnoxious.
socioeconomic
Any
inequality.
cards?
Yeah.
We have given you the plan, which
No.
will obturate the courts.
Okay. DA kind of like case. I mean K. Yeah.
K case.
Yeah.
Okay. The dissent we're kicking and will concede that it never ended, that it comes to the courts way too late. The counter plan. First, drop the argument on all theories. They're either right. We have to answer like 15 theory shells. It collapses us have to answer but it's like 15 theory shells and the two and R, which comes at the expense of substance and counter interpretation. And we get agents counter plans if they're the U.S. U.S. federal government. It's core ground because there's very little literature about things that just colleges and universities do. And that obviously still solves all their offense. It's obviously still solves all their offense because they get dissents to the USFG and it doesn't spill over because it's seen as a core actor for like most topics. And okay, they say the condo stuff. A counter-interpretation, we get 2 conditional advocacies as long as they're on different layers of the debate. That solves all their offense. A fairness to the applicants, unlimited prep, and prep time and primacy and recency. That's key to check back against inherent advantages. B, education. It allows for breadth of discussion and test the app from multiple angles. C, logical. They should have to prove the plan is better than the competitive options or the status quo. And all of their offense is not unique because people will just end up reading it like 15 crappy T-shells or disads with bad uniqueness, and they'll still have to do the exact same thing. There's no unique reason why advocacies are unique. And they'll be if all the counter plans are really shitty, then if all the counter plans have to be really shitty for them to be that short to squeeze in a whole bunch, and they'll be able to answer them really quickly, which answers all their offense. The K. The 1 error is fundamentally defensive and it will cost them this debate. They've conceded our thesis, which is that the world is in a constant state of unmastered flux. Their form of debate, imposition of technological mastery over the world, forces students to internalize the logic of efficient optimization of all entities, seeing the world as nothing more than the maximal perpetuation of force itself. They answer their arguments about how we didn't read a framework on the K, but anyways, we're going for the personalized education link. Extend Wilkins, generating choice and diversity in education is fundamentally a neoliberal project of nihilistic framing when they call for expanding access to the university for disadvantaged students. They construct students as rational consumers capable of choosing educational experiences as commodities, reinforcing a neoliberal atomistic individualization that prevents all forms of community and strengthens militarized subject-object distinctions. This enables a neoliberal inframium where we perceive the world as an object to be controlled through use value, enforcing a form of nihilism where no value is possible outside of being a tool in the cause of neoliberalism, and independently results in things like colonialism and environmental destruction when we perceive the rest of the world as purely an object to be controlled. This calculative aimlessness is terminal defense to the app. In the end, it doesn't matter whether or not you get into college because all value is swept away as neoliberal power commodifies all in its path. Independently, they presume that student needs can be accounted for in a rationally detached Cartesian manner and thereby responded to through careful calculation rather than changing educational institutions themselves. The app is nothing but a band-aid instead of solving for the reason minority students are disadvantaged in education. It just gets rid of some of the evidence of that. Standardized tests are nothing more than proof of the failure of modern education. Getting rid of that proof it just makes the ultimate remedy harder to achieve. They need to answer this argument before they win any risk of solvency on the case page. Against this, the alternative is a form of ontological education that positions teachers and students together as explorers of pedagogies rather than providers of, and consumers of knowledge. Rather than understanding education through use value, we should see it as an intrinsically complex source of values and intelligibility. Recognize that all arguments have political motivation. Be willing to step into new ways of thinking about the world and embrace the inability to control the world and the flux to find the best solutions to problems. This allows us to see the world in other ways and understand ourselves as rather existing in the world rather than existing as an entity that must control the world and not constantly run from unintelligibility. The framework stuff, they say we didn't read framework, but that was obviously the top of a critique of their model of debate, and their uniqueness stuff is really not very logical. We have an alternative, and we're also not really necessarily entirely about capitalism. We're about the capitalist logic of inframing. We do, which means any stuff about how like capitalism doesn't combat classism or argument. It's a way values are perceived within capitalism, which means we don't have to resolve all capitalism to win the alternative. They say there's the double bound, we either include meritocracy or the permutation solves, but the permutation doesn't solve, it's because it's severance out of basically every part of the app except for the 1AC util. Obviously everything we isolated is links, the way their method of approaching debate, including the methodological pluralism stuff, their university good stuff, that's a voting issue. It makes the 1AR a moving target, which makes class entirely impossible. In addition, and there's sequencing the app all has to come before the app, otherwise the value system will modernity co-opted and make it undesirable because it seems useless. We have to teach students to think ontologically before they evaluate things through different value systems, and links are all disheads to the permutation, and they literally say that the app is inseparable from the plan, which means obviously the perm can't resolve those link arguments, and there's a curricular integration dishead under the permutation. The alt becomes an object to be studied in class, something to be paid for those interested, and students never think ontologically, will just think about the concept of ontological thinking. It has to be how we think, not what we think, and you obviously can't think in two different ways at the same time, which means the perm is severance out of their method of debate. And they say private actor fiat, but there's literally no stable definition of what private actor fiat even means, and we should vote for things like anything that the ballot can actually control is obviously the only thing you should vote for. There's a distinction from private actor fiat. This is nonsensical. We are not a floating thing. They say GPA always gets better, but this is non-responsive. They say value to life is inevitable, but this is not necessarily true because capitalism strips things like family of all values. We can only perceive things through use value, i.e., you see your family as a means to rise up the ladder of socioeconomic progress. And additionally, it's comparative value to life, which means if we win a net increase in value to life resulting from the alt, you should vote for us. The case page. Their Waldron's card was seriously mishandled. It cites a UC Berkeley study that says that 18% less black students would be eligible at UC colleges. This is probably better. They don't really answer that, and it's probably better than their stuff because it cites more than just one college, which is all their solvency evidence.
Cool. 1.5. Your debate's done. Okay.
He said, solid neighbor. Yeah. Solid something conceited, but I was just like, I don't know. I don't think he made mess something up or like, he's like concealed with every argument.
If you're saying you consider every argument, if you consider every
It's like stuff like judgment, which I know I flagged enough.
who's in the back?
What was the sequencing to say?
What was the sequencing? It's not. It's just the app the alt has to come before the app because otherwise the value systems that we see the plan through co-opt it and make it seem undesirable, and so we have to teach students to think ontologically before they can value things through different value systems.
And what was the integration to say?
The curricular, basically, under the permutation, the alt just becomes part of a university class, and students they just think about the alt and never think through the alt.
That's what I do.
That's saying it.
Functionally,
Dude,
that's what I
the
do.
most wholesome thing about 8th grade debate is that they all engage each other in good faith. And so it's so cute. They're like, oh, is this your argument? They're like, yes. They're like, oh, that's such a good point. I like it. It's so cute.
That's what you said we should take ontologically. I feel like we should maybe do that.
What's case?
Case.
Yeah.
Standardized tests are biased and prevent minorities from accessing higher education. The impact of cycles of inequalities and earning disparities, which spills over to quality of life for black people because for black and brown bodies, because it means that they're because the app means that they're able to basically get more money, which allows them to provide for their families better. The culture of the alternatives worst argument they've considered a culture bias argument that it's that standardized testing is something that's culturally biased. It relies on white experiences and vocabulary and test vocabulary, which doesn't reflect other cultures, which proves that the SAT is something racist. This wasn't really extended. This was extended with 15 seconds. You shouldn't give it much credence. The fundamental concession that they make is they have considered our framework that you should weigh the case. Anything else is extremely arbitrary and destroys topic education. This is is extremely arbitrary and destroys topic education. This is a technical concession, but it'll win us the debate. Value to life was something that they seriously underestimated, which means that as long as we win a value or a risk to value to life, it means that you can vote affirmative because the SAT is something that is racist and something that is bad, which means that it'll outweigh the critique. They say that there's value to life through that capitalism reduces value to life, but our argument is that capitalism isn't something that is infinitely permeating society, and they don't have a link argument to that, to how the app causes that, but rather that people can always recollect value in things like family, friends, etc. through a contingent social connections. Humans are not beings that are just inherently rejecting other people, and they're inherently social creatures, which means that neoliberalism is not something that is ever possible in totality, but rather can exist in parts, which proves our non-unique argument that capitalism is something that is high right now. The capitalism is something that is high right now, which proves that their framework, which proves that their critique is something that is fundamentally non-unique. They do not have any brain or bright line for how the app actually ends up causing neoliberalism. You should ask yourself what this link actually says, and if you think that you can say that the app reducing standardized testing, which is a method of neoliberal commodification of students' identities, and you can look me in the face and say that a shift away from that is something that is still capitalist, then you should probably just go and vote negative. They say the double bind is a voting issue, but it's not severance. Methodological. We didn't go for methodological pluralism in the 1 year, which means that there's no link to the double bind. They have independently conceded it that the affirmative either causes. Either doesn't include the plan, in which case the case is a massive solvency deficit, which outweighs because all of their violence that they are talking about is just defensive. It says that life might not have value, but insofar as we are winning that pain is something that is bad. It means that any risk that there is value to life means that you should vote out because those lives deserve not to feel pain. But it also justifies the perm if it does include the affirmative because it means that you can just vote out because it includes the plan. Yeah.
you record your speeches?
I recorded yours as well.
Will you send them to me?
Yeah. I'll post them on YouTube and then I'll send you them.
Okay.
No, good. These things happen. Oh, yeah, that's what I was about to say. I was like, all right, speaking skills it is. Flow can read.
Fight you.
Last time I sat and you were on the panel, it was amazing.
And then Basil tried to fight me.
Yeah, I was very clearly wrong in that debate.
This bit I feel like is ambiguous enough that I
It's
can
pretty ambiguous.
maybe justify sitting. Man.
Do you all know who the Carnegie Vanguard child is at Grapevine who just won it?
Grapevine's already over.
Yeah.
Wait, they still have rounds going this late?
Well, they have to end, like, they can't debate on Sunday.
Oh,
for
that's
certain,
right.
Yeah, for certain tournaments in
Where's-
Texas.
Had to ruin it though.
Wait, is it because it's like against the law or what?
Carol,
Because-
Church of the Reason?
I'm pretty sure.
What, because of church stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that like what they do in Georgia, calling like
Yeah.
them
They
like
also at
demonstrations
Emory.
at Emory? Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
At Emory, like
They-
calling them.
I shook my head.
Well, it's different. At Emory, it's not like a restriction on like the date. It's just like, I mean, not really, but yeah, they're able to get around that with like their loophole basically. It's like, we're not like judging these competitive debates, or they call us like professors as judges. It's so funny. So I judge Tej do a lay debate. It's so cute. Because the other two judges were lay, but I wasn't, so we had to adapt to them. And he was going for like the terror DA.
Oh.
And he was like, Judge, what we are saying is that the
Yeah.
affirmative will cause more terrorism. And I'm just like cracking up in the back.
He's been with us like this entire time online.
Yeah. Little meerkat, Tej.
Who won in policy?
I bet Capel did. Let me see.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Westlake did.
Really?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Capel wasn't even in finals.
Is it me who's holding it up, or are you all in?
I've been in, dog. Besides like that. Just kidding. Take it down. I'm just being annoying.
I'm good.
This ballot will make no friends.
I feel like
Scott Harris, but isn't even easy. Is that okay? Go ahead and announce it.
Congratulations, both teams making it to the doubles of whatever tournament this is. Loyola tournament. 2-1 for the affirmative. Cool. I said, weigh the plan because anything else is arbitrary and ruins topic education. Skeptical as to if the AF solves diversity because the 2NR reports that relying on GPA would decrease black enrollment by 18% using the empiric of this Berkeley example, which is conceded. But maybe the AF resolves the portion about cultural bias because the tests themselves rely on white experiences and thus don't reflect other cultures. The K, I think they want a link argument as to how the AF's faith in the rational ability of subjects to choose and the idea of diversity reifies neoliberal individualism, which outweighs the case on scope because it results in colonialism and environmental destruction, which would admittedly impact light, but more importantly, it turns the case because all valued life is rendered useless as individuals become cogs in the calculative machine of neoliberalism, which means that to the extent that the AF disagrees with the reduction in value of life that results from the racist SAT questions, I think it also colludes with the larger apparatus of neoliberalism that socializes inequality, which turns the case. And they have this argument as to how, you know, their neolib stuff ruins the quality of education.
Gotcha.
That was also not answered in the interview.
Okay, so I think we had a structural issue with our negative strategy by spreading ourselves too thin early on. We had a lot of good stuff going on in the Heidegger neolib like arena, but the 2NR was forced to be so light in so many places just due to sheer time pressure. We needed time to develop more of these like really important framing arguments, but because we were so light, it meant the app was like barely able to squeak by. So me voting app in this debate is not because I thought they had these like amazing, unique, and innovative like responses. It's more that just like you just like literally lacked the time to develop some of your arguments. So a big problem with the 2NR is that there really is no impact comparison between like the sort of neoliberal subjectivity that the plan would cause as a result of the link versus the racist and cultural bias of standardized tasks that exists in the SQO. So I ended up concluding that the app is able to solve approximate impact of racial and cultural bias, but I have no idea how thinking ontologically resolves that or neoliberalism like more broadly, right? This is also why we needed way more like judge instruction. There wasn't a whole lot of like ontology comes first, prior question. There was like some vague reference to like sequencing and stuff. But again, so much of this was so light, and I would feel so uncomfortable trying to like re-explain like what the complete version of that argument was to the affirmative. So we needed to make other big framework pushes about how we should view the app, like whether or not we should be able to weigh the app at all. You needed to cheat a lot more on like the framework part of the debate. Like, nope, you like don't get your app, make some fiat arguments. I don't care. But like you need to make a lot more tricky framework arguments. I thought your link explanation like was good. So like that wasn't really the issue in this debate. We needed to more link like impact comparison, right? Because like otherwise you're sort of leaving us like in an impossible decision where it's like the app causes more neoliberal subjectivity and maybe that makes education not that good anymore, Judge. And then the affirmative is like, but Judge, like these tests are very racist, like in bias, and and we're like, which is why this is probably a 2-1, right? So I think the way that you resolve that in the future is just by going like 1, maybe 2 off. Like, especially on this topic, the K links for like whatever like flavor of K you want to go for are so good on this topic. Like everyone already knows that by now, right? It's why you see reps going for Ks as well. Like what the hell is happening, right? So like I honestly think like it would have been so much more strategic for you just to like run into this debate, just be like, it's one off, we're going for like whatever, because you just need, because like you probably know the argument a little bit like better, in many ways, no offense.
No, for sure.
You know, and make more case arguments. Like you had like that one that was like barely a reference in the 2NR. I wouldn't feel comfortable explaining like how that implicates all of the app. It was just like there was a study, black students 18%, and I was like, so it's just, you know, we just needed way more time on some of these things to frame out all of the 1AR stuff. Because I agree, the 1AR was largely defensive, but sometimes that defense can win a lot when they sort of have like the same implication or like the same impact. And that's why we need more framework arguments, more cheaty framework arguments. And then I think we win this debate.
I think I have much less like substantial or useful comments, but I just kind of thought that the critique was, it was difficult for me to understand like exactly why the arguments we were making really mattered, whereas the affirmative had like much more clear impact. I don't really understand what ontological thinking means at the end. Like that might just be like my personal misunderstanding of the argument, but I don't think it's ever made like I think I know what it means, but I'm not 100% confident. Whereas like I'm pretty sure I know what the app does, and I have like a decent understanding of like how the app would resolve its impacts and why those matter. So I just like don't feel super comfortable voting for the K. But I think like we do a good job like explaining like why the affirmative like does the things like neoliberal and framing and such. I just don't really know why that's like worse than racism in tests. Just kind of, you know, it just doesn't feel good. So.
Yeah, the big thing that you'll, sorry, were you doing?
No, that's all I had to say.
Yeah, so the big thing that you'll have to deal with whenever you're like, going like for whatever K, for this topic, is you have to explain by whatever like subjectivity or whatever ism that the app causes, why is that worse than all the isms and bias that exists in the SWO, right? Because that is the main thing that judges are thinking. Like we are asking ourselves like, education, pretty bad right now, right? And the neg is like, yeah, education would still be pretty bad as a result of, you know, you voting app. So you want to make it sound like less like presumption level, because that's kind of what it sounded like in this debate. It sounded too defensive, like the impacts to your link argument, right? You need more explicit turns case arguments, and you want to make them external. Like here are all the external things. So maybe there could be like some sort of cruel optimism argument, right? It's like you tell students that like higher education colleges are, you know, this like mecca for like all these amazing things they're able to do, and once they get there they realize, oh crap, like this sucks, like this is actually not like, you know, something that's going to like get me out of like you know, the intergenerational wealth gap or whatever, right? All these things, so external impacts that they aren't able to solve.
Okay.
I have some questions.
Yeah.
So first, how can I make more offensive arguments on the K?
One, like recognize that this is Heidegger, and read some like offense about Heidegger.